symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Can Chris Hero Save Wrestling? And of course, we're going to answer that today, but not without the help of the man with the plan, the guy who brought us here today, Mr. Chris Hero. Chris, how are you, man?
I am super, man. How are you?
I like that, super, man. Well, I'm pumped. We're doing a Ask Hero Anything. I really enjoy this format. We get to bounce around, cover a lot of ground in one show, and this is the time of the show where we put you guys in control. Just throw you the keys, put your hands on the steering wheel. You're driving this ship. Let's jump right into it. Tim Dillon wants to know, any memories of working NWA No Limits in Iowa? Quote, it's always a party in Iowa.
NWA No Limits. They had an agreement with Ian Rotten and IWA Mid-South in 2003, 2004, 2005, something, those 2-3 years. And I would go out and work for them in like Rock Island, Illinois, which is in the Quad Cities, Muscatine, Iowa, Burlington, Iowa. And there was, I believe it was an Econo Lodge that we would all stay at. And it was always a party. There were always, like 20, 30 wrestlers staying there. We'd have some kind of a double shot and cause a little chaos at the hotel, and friendly chaos, nothing detrimental, out of the 80s or anything. But funny story I remember is, I'm not sure the name for it, but the way this hotel was set up, there was like some kind of a waterfall inside, and there were like little balconies that overlooked onto the pool, but it was still very kind of homey. It wasn't like a huge, massive hotel. And, people would go out to their little balconies and hang out and climb from one room to the other, or something silly like that. And then Claudio, he was very new to the States. He came late 2004. So I believe I think we drove out from the East Coast, long ass road trip. And Claudio is just like the most conservative, he'll hang out and have a good time, but he's not like a super party or anything. Very funny guy, but he's not going to, cause any kind of damage. But this night he was a little wound up, maybe jacked up on some Diet Pepsi or something. And we're hanging out by the balconies. There's people in the pool. And just to get a kick out of it, he took like one of the little lawn chairs that are in our balcony, and he takes it and he chucks it into the pool. And everybody it is so out of character for him to do anything like that, right? And we all just kind of stopped for a minute and we looked at him. Again, this is Claudio with hair, with like the little ponytail. We stop and we look at him and he goes, ECW. So just a very uncharacteristic moment for Claudio. It's just a very fun time. What else do I remember? My last little story here is, I believe I was wrestling Brandon Tomaselli in a singles match. Sometimes before a match, your body plays tricks on you, your mind plays tricks on you. You'll think you have to go to the bathroom. You end up going to the bathroom 2 or 3 times. But I thought, man, I got to go drop a deuce. And you have that struggle. You're like, do I have time to do it? And usually by the time it takes to make that decision, you've missed your window. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to get it over with. I mean, I don't want the unforgivable to happen. So I am sitting in a stall and I'm, trying to take care of my biz. And sure enough, I hear my music. And fortunately, at this time, the song that I had come out to, as chosen by Ian Rotten, was Kryptonite by Three Doors Down. And I know 6 seconds to make my entrance, before the song kicks in. So I am that little guitar, bang, 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 bang. And I'm like, oh man. And I'm just like, you still got to be tidy. You still got to, you don't want to rush yourself and make a bigger mess. So I'm like, okay. All right. Boom, 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 throughout the door, come around. And it's funny because we're in just like like a community center or a gym. So like I have to dart across people to get back to the locker room to come out the curtain. So, it's independent wrestling, right? So I make it through the curtain, boom, right on time. I'm like, all right, awesome. So I go to make my entrance. I hop up on the apron. I grab the corner turnbuckle, and I used to do this thing where I would put my foot on the bottom buckle and I'd flip myself over into the ring, using that bottom buckle as a little extra spring. And I do this, and somehow I under rotate, and I am stuck completely upside down, and it just time froze. I'm like, my body doesn't know what's happening. My brain doesn't know what's happening. And then I look, and the corner turnbuckle had a hook that was, hooking the ropes to the ring post. And my pants had gotten caught on the bottom of that hook. So sure enough, I had to skin the cat back over to the apron, unhook my pleather pants, which now had a nice hole in it right by the little CH logo, dust myself off, flip into the ring for an even bigger ovation that I would have gotten the first time. So that was a hell of like 2.5 minutes for me. It's almost like nightmare stuff, right? But made it work. We had a fun match, and that was that. I always loved working with those guys. I got to wrestle Carino out there. I wrestled a guy named Josh Abercrombie. Some fun venues, some fun crowds.
I
And
haven't heard that name in forever. What's Josh Abercrombie up to? When's the last time you talked to him?
I believe he has messaged me in the last 6 to 9 months or so, asking if I was interested in coming up and doing a seminar at a school up there in Michigan. I believe he wrestles occasionally as Josh Raymond, his real name. And he is a wrestling coach as well, like at a school. I'm not sure if it's like junior high or high school, but he works with amateur wrestlers as well as local pro wrestlers. Man, he was great in the ring. Always fun to work with. We really only wrestled a couple times, but he was very, very innovative. He and Tyler Black or Seth Rollins had some crazy match in that era.
Let's talk about James Lehman's question. He says, what was the global feeling internally with NXT when AEW announced they were going head to head? Were the ratings ever discussed internally?
I do remember some people talking at one of our Coconut shows, one of our Florida shows. I'm not quite sure. Maybe like Coco or Daytona. I think it was Daytona. It was probably like the week before AEW went live. And I remember a handful of people being a little delusional about what AEW's capabilities were. I think people just thought, I don't know. I don't think people thought they were, not when I say people, I'm not talking about like a consensus of a locker room, because there's a lot of smart people there were able to foresee what has happened, but there were definitely some people that were way wrong about what they were going to be able to do on their first night and in the coming nights. I was really curious. I was so curious. I wasn't sure what kind of audience was going to be there for both shows.
Right.
But it's been very interesting, and it'll continue to be interesting.
Here's one from Mike Stevenson. Can you give me a match from 2000 to 2010 that I need to watch? And he means a non-WWE match. He says that era of non-WWE stuff is a complete blind spot for him. So yeah, let's think about that. Some sort of off the beaten path. Maybe it's indie, maybe it's Japan, maybe it's one of each. 2000 to 2010. Anything jump off the page to you?
The first match that comes to mind is a match that I had the privilege to see in person for Pro Wrestling Noah. And it was the main event of our final show on the tour, June 2009. It was the tour where, unfortunately, Misawa passed away. Very emotional tour, very surreal time, especially just being in a foreign country, and just words can't really do it justice as far as how surreal everything was. But to wrap up the tour, we finished up at Korakuen Hall. I had a singles match with a guy named Akihiko Ito, a young boy that had tremendous potential. He has since retired from wrestling, but I got to open the show, had a great match with him. It was just very fun. Crowd was awesome. The main event was Kenta and Go Shiozaki against Katsuhiko Nakajima and Kensuke Sasaki. So you have Kensuke, big final boss style wrestler, and his young boy Nakajima, who maybe one of the hardest kickers in pro wrestling. And then you have one of the other hardest kickers in pro wrestling in Kenta, and you have Shiozaki, who had won the GHC championship that tour. It had been held up. Akiyama had to vacate. And just, it was chops, kicks, and clotheslines. That was basically the gist of the match. And it was so emotional. Just incredible. And it does hold up. It obviously, for those watching it that weren't there and just don't have that context of being there and being in that moment, I don't want to say it'll underwhelm, but this is absolutely an incredible match. Like I said, June 2009, Nakajima, Kensuke Sasaki versus Go Shiozaki and Kenta. Incredible match. Just, so physical. That's the match that comes to mind.
Here's a question from Don. He wants to know, who is one wrestler that you always wanted to face but never got the chance to?
I talked about this on the last Wrestling Genius. The ones that come immediately to mind are Eddie Guerrero, Toshiaki Kawada, and Keiji Muto. Three guys that I admire their in-ring work so much, for a number of reasons. Muta specifically, I saw him in 1989, and I saw him hit a moonsault, and just his face paint and the mist. I was enamored. I had just gotten into wrestling, and I was watching the Rockers versus the Twin Towers, and guys like Demolition. And then you flip over the other channel and you see another guy with face paint, only he's doing backflips from the top rope and spitting green fog in his faces. It broke my brain. And he's a guy that is active right now. He's the GHC heavyweight champion. So it's not on my current trajectory, but it's not out of the question. I would love to, work with him in some kind of capacity someday. I've been on a couple shows with him. I've met him before. But yeah, that's definitely someone that I would love to wrestle.
Here's one that we haven't talked about before. Antonio Santos wants to know, I love the basketball themed wrestling attire you always had. Which one was the most cherished? Here's the thing. You didn't start with wrestling theme. Basketball jersey attire. There was a transition though. Why the change? And what was your favorite basketball gear?
Okay, so let's go back a little bit. I've always designed my own gear. I had always designed my own gear, and very simple, just little stuff here and there. But I was always looking for different color combinations that would stand out. Everybody's got black. Everybody's got black and white. Everybody's got red and black, blue and black, whatever. And I wanted to have just something different. So the colors that I liked and were very different. I thought about the Milwaukee Bucks, and I got an outfit that was purple and forest green. And this was in the era. I don't know if you've ever seen any of these matches, Conrad, but I sometimes I would wear baggy pants, sometimes I would wear tights. So I thought, why not have a set of gear that's tights with one baggy leg? And it just looks like one bell bottom. And it is so silly, but I don't regret it at all because it was different and whatever. It's questionable with fashion, but it's something that stood out. So I had a set of gear there. So that was kind of my mindset as far as just trying out different color combinations. Another one that I had a set made that I didn't like, so I never wore it, but in Cleveland Browns colors, brown, orange, and white, which that's not a common gear
Combination. No.
combination for people in pro wrestling. I'm sure plenty of people have had it now, but back then just it was something different. And I also liked like powder blue and maroon, kind of like the Phillies. So that's where my brain was at that time. And when I was working for NXT the first time, I had a set of gear designed in the pattern of the Orlando Magic. So it was like, Cassius with like a star and, black with little pinstripes. I wore that a couple times, and that was shortly before I got released. So I really only wore it a couple times. But nobody really caught on to it because I didn't wear any jerseys with it at that time. So the second I get back to Japan, I meet up with my gear guy over there. He's this guy. I'll talk with him at length at some point, but he always made such great gear for me, great boots. And then I just, I'd get with various design guys that would work on designs for me. And I'm like, okay, well, I like the Dream Team. So let's get a Dream Team set of gear made, right? Let's get a Supersonics set of gear made, and then maybe let's make another Orlando Magic or something like that. And this was what I would wear, and I would usually just wear my ring jackets. But then after a while, I'm like, man, I have all these jerseys, I have all these throwback jerseys. Let me, start to show a little bit more of my personality, a little bit of my fandom. So it'd be like guys that I grew up watching. So if I'm wearing the Sonics gear, I've got a Sean Kemp jersey on. If I'm wearing the Denver Nuggets, I got a Mutombo jersey. If I'm wearing Atlanta Hawks, it's going to be Dominique or Spud Webb. And then once it kind of started catching on, I'm like, well, I need to get a Phoenix Suns set of gear, a Charles Barkley jersey. Then it's like, well, shoot, I have to get a Duke set, right? So I had my blue Duke set, and any number of jerseys that I could wear with that. So it just got to be really fun. And then I made some that I only wore once or twice. I've got like a Dallas Mavericks set that I wore in Texas, but then I also wore in Germany because I had a Dirk Nowitzki jersey, right? Which I don't even know if anybody cared, but it amused me. So as far as cherished, I really like the way the Duke set looked. I just was really happy with the way that came out, and was so happy that I got the same style made in NXT in purple. I got it in black on black, like triple black. And I also got it made in green that I just did not end up wearing. Didn't end up fitting right, and I got released. So I loved that, just kind of the font. And then, now, gosh, I just have so many jerseys. There's so many different directions I can go in, but it's just a little something that kind of helps me connect with an audience too, because I'm not the only one that grew up watching basketball. And it's, I can do it both ways. Like I can go to an area, I can wrestle in, Toronto, and wear like a Raptors jersey, or I can, what's a good one? I could go in Philly and I could wear like a Celtics set, so I could play it both ways. I remember for one Battle of Los Angeles year, I wore Lakers one night and Clippers the next. And I had people that were so furious both nights like it wasn't like it didn't inspire the people that liked the teams. It inspired the people that hated the teams.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I wore Lakers one night and people were shitting on me. And then I'm like, I wore Clippers the next. And I'm like, even more people. I'm like, what is going on? Maybe people just don't like me. It doesn't matter what jersey I wear. So what you got any suggestions, Conrad? Any teams I should go for or any jerseys?
I mean, I thought the Dream Team one was my favorite. I
Mhm.
like that we both grew up watching the same era of basketball, but the Dream Team was like next level. If you were a basketball fan, it felt like, wait a minute, what? It's almost like, the what we hoped the invasion would be.
Yeah.
The Dream Team was that for basketball. It was cool.
Do you know which Dream Team jersey I wore on the Indies when I would wear that gear?
No, I mean, I would hope it's 92.
Yeah, but which player from that team?
Stupid ass Christian Laettner. Right? Gotta be.
Woo! Hell yeah, Conrad. You are 1 for 1.
The worst player on the team.
Oh man.
But I knew he's your boy. So, and by the
course.
way, if you're not in the loop on Christian Laettner and you're listening to this, go watch the 30 for 30 from ESPN on him. It will give you a whole new context to heel. He was a heel, but a hell of a basketball player, had a great story, but maybe a little in over his head.
Yeah, I think he was the perfect college basketball player.
Yes.
Just his career, his trajectory, his attitude, just his swagger, for a preppy white guy. You watch that documentary, it's called I Still Hate Laettner.
Yeah.
And it baby faces him because it tells you his beginnings, his family and how he came up, and it kind of baby faces him a little bit, but man, just he's like the perfect college basketball player to me, of course.
Let's talk about Bola that you mentioned a minute ago. Joseph wants to know, how much fun is Pro Wrestling Guerrilla for the talent? I got to attend one PWG show and it was insane for the fans.
Just a party, like a good pro wrestling love party. Everybody got along. Everybody was encouraging. We'd have a little screen in the back so we could watch, some of the matches. It would fade in and out, but we'd get an idea of kind of what people were doing. And sometimes in a locker room, you're watching the monitor, and it's just that critical nature that we have that's like, oh, why'd they do that? Or I can't. Well, that was dumb. Just that kind of thought process comes over us sometimes because we're so critical on ourselves. PWG, we are sitting there and just like, are you kidding me? Like, how did he do that? Like, what is he doing? Is he alive? Just a very inspirational atmosphere. Those Battle of Los Angeles tournaments were grueling because sometimes you'd have 2-3 matches one night and the venue would be so hot and so packed in there, so much body heat from the audience, just, sticky beer on the ground, just one of a kind atmosphere. I always enjoyed wrestling there. And the audience, I mean, it's just a pro wrestling audience, man. They can make an okay match good, a good match great, and a great match, a unforgettable match that you'll never forget. I've had so many matches there that are just so, crystallized in my memory. Whether it was from the match, the reaction, something that happened in the crowd, just a great place to work. And I've actually never been to any of their shows in the new venue.
Oh, wow.
And I'm really curious to, see how that is. I mean, probably won't be for a little while, but I am eager to see what PWG looks like post-pandemic.
Speaking of PWG, Ryan has a question. Any stories about Super Dragon?
Let's see. Well, here's one for you. Um, I I met Super Dragon on America Online, and we would, we'd have like these little chat rooms where there'd be like a couple IWA guys or some other wrestlers, and we'd kind of just little talk shit back and forth. So I met Super Dragon online before he came to IWA Mid South in like late 2002. I believe it was TPI 2002, and that was the first time I met him. And then, we kind of stayed in touch, and he eventually booked me for the Tango and Cash Tag Team Tournament in January of 2004. I teamed with Punk, and that was my first time working for PWG. It was probably one of their first 10 shows, I'd say. And then later that year, he ended up bringing me back over, and I wrestled him. in CZW and in PWG that year. But something that comes to mind is I was doing commentary, and they had a heel group. It was the Bucks. It was Super Dragon. Roderick Strong, I think, was in this group at the time. They had a couple different iterations of the group. And I don't remember the exact details, but they just beat the shit out of someone. They left them laying, right? And they're heels. And I'm on commentary, right? So I'm just sitting there, and the fans just kind of start looking back at me. And I'm like, no, don't look at me. Like, look at the match. Like, what are you doing? And then now it's gone from 10 people looking at me to 50 to 100. And like, I have to stand up at the desk. And now I'm basically getting called out by these ass kickers. And sure enough, I slide out and hit the ring, and the heels, like, they scurry. So I'm like, okay, cool. I got to save a little face, right? And then there's this guy, and I'm not sure if it's the same guy, but there's a guy that is just chanting Super Dragon, right? Much like the Botchamania videos. He's
Yeah.
Super Dragon. And then I just crawl out of the ring, and I get in this guy's face, and this guy is relentless. He is just, screaming in my face. And, I go up to him. I'm nose to nose with him, and he's not backing down at all. And then out of the corner of my eye, there's tassels flying up my face, and then I'm getting fucking super kicked by the Young Bucks. I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? And sure enough, I'm like, oh my God, I just start fighting back, and this is all impromptu. And I'm just like, I've got a buck over here. I've got a buck over here. I'm like, bam, 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 bam. And next thing you know, I'm in the ring. Super Dragon has me and gives me a psycho driver in the ring. And, he hadn't wrestled much in the previous years, and I hadn't worked with him since maybe like 2005 or something like that. And I'm upside down, landed on the top of my head. I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, this dude is crazy. Maybe I'm crazy for getting my ass involved. I should have just stayed at the announce desk, but it's, these things happen in wrestling that are just completely spontaneous. And, PWG is not the kind of place that has like a format and a run sheet and a, list of segments, but things like this, when they happen, they're memorable and they're fun.
Here's one that we've never talked about, but people always ask about. Joseph Carr wants to know any stories of your CM Punk match where you literally tore the building down during the match, was being torn down or renovated a couple days later. So you literally, can't stress that enough, tore it down. Your matches with Punk is what made me become a fan of yours. Can't wait to hear more of your stories.
Oh, the barn in Clarksville. When I started working for IWA summer of 2000, Ian had been running inside that building, but man, he would always have, I don't know if he just had enemies or people calling, zoning commissions and stuff on him, but he didn't have the right kind of permit or something. So he had to run out back. So the first couple shows I did for IWA were behind this building, like in the grass. That's where I first wrestled Colt Cabana. That's, where first time I wrestled Ace Steel. was out behind this place. And there's like a house right there. And there'd be people, you know, coming in the backyard, looking over their fence, like watching the show. And Ian would be like cutting a promo, and I'm like, hey, go back inside or buy a ticket or you know, like, what are you gonna, you know, what are you gonna do? Like put up a barricade or something? Just so we eventually got back inside the building. He got everything straight, and man, we had some raucous crowds in there. There was one year that ICP came in, and then there were a whole bunch of juggalos in the crowd, and that kind of got out of hand. The first King of the Death matches that I ever saw, and I was actually in it, took place in that building. First time I ever wrestled Necro Butcher, like these were all in this building. And, you know, for one reason or another, Ian had lost the building and we were switching to a place in Clarksville. So this was our last night in the building, and we were semi-main. We were not the last match because the last match was a hardcore match, but you know, we can kind of do whatever we want. And we kind of took liberty with that. And, you know, I like pick Punk up and I spear him through the drywall, and we're putting like holes in it. We are just going through the crowd. Man, I felt terrible. It's funny you say you felt terrible, but I was hitting this like swinging Uranage slam on Punk on the floor. And as I'm trying to land him on a chair that is like seated, but when I swing him around, his foot kicks the chair completely out of the way. So I just land him on the damn ground.
Oh,
I'm like, oh, sorry, dude. I took a reverse Frankensteiner to the floor head first through a damn table in that match. I don't know what I was thinking. The worst thing of that match was we're like, let's do a little something off the balcony. There's like a mini balcony. It's not super high, but it's high enough to get up there and be like, I don't know if I should do that. And we had tables double stacked, and there isn't a lot of room to move around up there with the height that he and I had. So instead of trying to do some kind of a slam or something off of it, we opted for me giving Punk a Russian leg sweep off the top through the tables, which is like the dumbest move you can do, because I'm causing him slightly more damage than I'm causing myself. Like, it's, you know, I don't think Brad Armstrong ever gave someone a Russian leg sweep off a balcony. But
no.
So the worst part about this is I'm taller than he is. So when we melt through these tables like hot, like a knife through hot butter, man, it was just bam, bam. And my head untucks and the back of my head hits the concrete. And I just remember, like, you know, just this shiver going over my body, like, oh, and like the ref came over to me and I was just like, oh, that was stupid. That was stupid. Another moment of that match that I thought was cool and very stupid was they have these support beams throughout this building, and it's a ladder match. It's tables and ladders, and we're trying to get the IWA title. And I jump from the top rope up to this beam, you know, like I'm on a jungle gym or something. We're just like, you know, hanging on this beam, and I was like, I can't believe we actually made it up there. That was something that, like, hey, we'll try to do this, and if we don't get it, like, forget it. But he and I are hanging from this beam, which could give away at any time. What a stupid thing. What were we thinking? And we're like kicking each other, and then we both kind of crotch ourselves a little bit on the rope. That match probably supposed to be 25 minutes. But we just, you know, we had to get our shit in, I guess. that wasn't a thought we had going into it. We just had a lot of things that we wanted to do. And, you know, we sold a lot of the match, and it ended up being, you know, 45, 50 minutes. And that was kind of the precursor to us having our longer matches, because that one ended up kind of flying by, and, you know, we ended up doing a lot of stuff, but it wasn't, I don't know. We still had the crowd throughout, so that kind of took us in a different direction. But another little story about that show, and it's going to be disappointing because I had the story in my head as one way, and then I found something out in the last year.
Hmm.
So through that previous previous fall, Ian had been booking Bart Gunn. But Bart, I believe, was living in Kentucky at that time, and Ian would pay him and give him some gas money. He'd drive over to the show, and he was working an angle with a pro wrestler with an MMA background named Adrian Serrano from the Wisconsin area, and they had a couple matches together or whatever, and Bart had his Brawl for All trophy, this big trophy with him that he would take out to the ring and whatever. But Bart Gunn did like 3 IWA shows and then it never came back. And his trophy was just hanging out in the locker room. We just feel like, what fucking Bart Gunn's Brawl for All trophy is just hanging out in the corner of this dirty ass locker room. And now we've come to our final show in this building, right? And the main event, as I said, it's like a Fans Bring the Weapons with Pondo and, probably Mitch Page and Corporal Robinson, I'm guessing. I know Pondo was in it for sure. And Pondo mid-match comes back to the locker room and grabs Bart's trophy. And then he brings it out to the ring and he's just like, "Hey, Brawl for All." And he puts it up through 2 chairs and, senton someone through the damn trophy. And I always thought that was so funny. And just so like that he did not give a shit about that trophy, that he just left it there. However, when the Vice Brawl for All episode aired, I tweeted about this, and I had gotten a message from this guy, Rich Wayne, who is an IWA Mid-South fan, and the damn trophy was purchased by Ian Rotten. He bought it at like a trophy store and gave it to Bart as a prop. So this whole time, 15 years, maybe 18 years, I'm telling everybody that the Brawl for All trophy was destroyed by Madman Pondo.
Oh my God.
But it is just a bullshit trophy. So
here's one from Ryan. Was there ever a time that you and Cesaro were in discussion to be put together in WWE and reform the Kings of Wrestling?
I've said this before, but no. And the reason I say that is when we had our tryout, Hunter was very particular. He said, "Listen, if we bring you guys in, we're bringing you guys in as 2 separate individuals." And he just made a point that, especially at that time, there was just the way tag teams were kind of looked at. They were just they preferred like guy and a guy as opposed to a team. They did have a couple teams at that era, but I think there was something behind the scenes that's like, well, if we put all this time and effort and money into a team and then one of the guys gets hurt, that sabotages the whole act. So there was a time period, and gosh, you could argue that time period is still going on, where tag teams were not treated the same way or pushed the same way or thought of the same way. So we always felt that if the time was right, we would have an opportunity to do something kind of as a one-off, and then it might be something that would lead to something in the future. We always thought that. I wouldn't say always, but I just had that in the back of my head. Like, well, if it ever does happen, we have such great chemistry together and so much that we can do that people watching it won't expect anything, and then they'll be blown away. You can tell, though, that never happened. The only time that we did team together was a dark match at a Full Sail that from Cesaro versus Punk. I came out, caused the DQ. Seth Rollins made the save, turned into a tag, myself and Claudio against Punk and Rollins. And very, very fun moment. It was before like the peak of Full Sail. So I think the people there did appreciate it, but probably not quite as much as they would have in a year or two later. And again, Claudio made an appearance to celebrate my 20th anniversary in pro wrestling at an NXT show. I wrestled Adam Cole in the main event and had a real fun match where, here comes Undisputed Era. Here's Roddy, here's Bobby, here's this and that, whatever. There's a ref bump, and they're getting ready to do something to me. And then Cesaro slides out, hits the ring, boom. Really, really cool moment. That was awesome. There's a lot of clips of that on Instagram or Twitter. Very, very fun to be able to do that, do something fun like that on a house show.
Matt wants to know any stories from the Scenic City Invitational in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Scenic City was fun. There was a diner attached to the hotel, pretty much, that everybody hung out at. You'd go there like, oh, I'm going to go grab some eggs or something. And you look and it's like, there's 50 wrestling fans in here.
And they're all eating cake.
Yeah, they're all eating pancakes. What is going on in Chattanooga? No, I got to have quite a few fun matches. I worked my way through the tournament and ended up in a 4-way final. Good area, good crowd, very diverse roster for that tournament. It was a lot of fun.
Did you go to the prom?
I did not. I don't believe the prom was a thing yet, but I have seen people talk about it on Twitter.
Explain to some of our listeners who have no idea what I just said, what the hell we're talking about.
I only have a vague knowledge of it. It's kind of like a little get together for the fans and they dress up. Is that correct?
My understanding is when the matches are over, everybody goes and hangs out, and some people take it more seriously than others.
Yeah. They'll come dressed up and have a nice corsage.
But we are into some weird stuff, you know.
Yeah. What else do I remember? For that, I drove up because I think I also booked a show in Atlanta that Sunday. I think it was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I like driving, and it was kind of more conducive that way rather than hopping on a plane, having a couple connections. And the only vehicle that they had for me to rent was a bright orange Dodge Charger. And that is so not my car, but very, very funny to go up and drive in that.
Let's do another one here. This is an interesting one that we haven't discussed because, well, reasons. And I don't know how you're going to respond to this, so forgive me in advance if it's not a good question. But CM Punk, I don't know. Someone who has a parody account says, with folks like AEW, Impact, GCW, Ring of Honor, New Japan, etc., running shows, what has kept you from wrestling the last few months? Is it COVID precautions or are there other factors? Can't wait to see you back in a ring.
COVID precautions for sure. It is traveling and putting myself in situations where I just have little to no control. I've done really well so far. I've not gotten sick. Rach has been good. We've been very smart. I've gotten my first shot. I got another shot coming up in a couple weeks. That'll be nice. That'll be a nice relief. That doesn't mean I won't continue to be safe, but I just, I wanted things to be a little bit more under control before I hit it again, because I'm kind of like an all or nothing kind of guy. If anybody's ever looked at my independent wrestling schedule, I'm the kind that will book a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday with a whole lot of travel in between, just because I want to have a lot of matches. I want to work in front of a lot of different crowds. I want to see a lot of places. But that is not really happening right now. They had a ton of shows, Mania weekend. They ran the Collective, months before that. And to varying degrees of success, some people were perfectly fine. Some people, got ill. And I just don't want to risk that. I've worked really hard so far, and now it's to the point where whenever I come back, whatever I do, I'm going to have a lot of eyes on me. There's a lot of people that have been wondering what I'm going to do and when I'm going to do it. So I'm going to make sure that whatever it is that I do um, will make the most sense and will, have the greatest effect and something that I can build off of for the future. I'm not interested in just kind of doing something as like a one-off here or there. Um, that's more of something that I would do if I was working a full schedule and, pop over here as a surprise or, show up in a place that you wouldn't normally see me. Um, I'm just being very particular about this. And I've had a lot of conversation with different promoters and fellow wrestlers, and I've had a lot of great offers, but nothing has made me want to pull the trigger just yet. And I'm hoping things will look a little bit better, maybe the end of the summer. But I'm just kind of going to stay the course for the time being.
Do you have a benchmark you want to meet? Like, hey, when I've had this and that, and there's been no this or that. I mean, what is the metric you're looking for before you say, okay, now's the time?
It's not so much a metric as it is a feeling. And gosh, I remember when I've said this before. I was in England when a lot of the first stuff was going on about the virus, and flying home was when I started seeing people wearing masks and whatever. And I was one of the only people that I knew at that moment that was taking it seriously. I had medical professionals say to me, "Don't worry, it's just the flu."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just had a feeling. I'm like, at that time, I was like, man, I don't think things are going to be close to normal again till the end of summer. And you should have seen the way people were looking at me back then. They're like, what? Like that long? Like, and back then I thought like that was a pretty good estimate.
Yeah.
Now we got another summer.
Yeah.
So it's not I obviously want to be fully vaccinated. And like I said, that's coming kind of soon. But it's just going to be a feeling. It's, when more people have been running, we've got some fans in the building. People are being safe, people are being healthy. That's when I'll feel comfortable enough to get back at it full time. I am just sickened by how inconsiderate some people are. And that is, pulling off at a gas station and walking inside and just looking around and seeing like, oh my God, these people they're just, they don't care, or they're just oblivious, or
Both.
just be compassionate. You don't have to, I don't expect people to hold themselves to the same standard I hold myself, but there's just something about a little humanity, a little compassion toward your fellow human. And man, I like grocery shopping. People are savages, man. They will just reach over you and climb after you, and they won't say, excuse me. And this stuff has just been magnified for me the last year. And I'm not comfortable in those situations. And I'd rather not put myself in a situation where, I get sick, or someone, that I'm close with gets sick. And it's my fault. And there's, nothing I can do about it. So I'm just going to keep on keeping on. But man, this fire is still burning, Conrad. I am still, gosh, it is so difficult and so hard for me to abstain from what I love. My entire adult life, man, I hopped into this right out of high school. I've had 3 real jobs in my life that aren't wrestling related, and record store, shoe store, hotel. And that was when I was 20, or 19 was when I left the hotel job. And this has been my life, man. This is different town every weekend, different hotel, different friend's couch, friend's floor, in the car with 5 people, in the car with people I don't know, in the car with people for a decade. Um, just that, I miss it all. I miss the connection with fans. I miss seeing the familiar faces in the crowd. I miss um, the challenge that somebody has when I come there and I'm the name guy and I'm wrestling the local guy. I just miss that look in his face when he's trying to put together a good match with me, and then we just kind of go through this struggle together and we come out on the end, and now me and this guy have a bond. Like I just miss that whole process, and I just want to make sure that I can continue to do this at a high level for as long as I possibly can. I don't want to do anything, anything that will jeopardize that, especially since I've already waited so long.
Here's one from Viking Ninja, sort of a follow up to that question. When it's safe to do seminars, what would be some of the topics you'd be interested in conducting for yours?
The last dozen or so seminars that I've done, I have the same kind of pattern that I do for all of them. And the reason I do things in this way, which I'll explain in a moment, is because if you come to hold a seminar with a set amount of material that you're going to cover from A to Z, whatever, you just run the risk of telling people stuff that they already know, telling people stuff that their wrestling brain doesn't have the capacity for just yet. Or if it's like drills and such, I'll find some people that they came there and they just love these couple things that we do. And then there's some people that it's just not what they're really interested in. Right. So what I like to do is I like to individualize my seminars now. And I always give them the opportunity. I say, hey, at the end of this, if there's anything you want to see in the ring, any questions you have for in-ring stuff, wait till the end and I'll hop in there and I'll show you, or we'll talk about it, whatever. But what I find to work best in these seminars is to just talk my ass off. And not just me. I want them to talk. I want to find out a little bit about the people in the seminar. So I'll ask their names and what their experience is. Because I'll have people that are 10-year vets. I'll have people that have gone to 2 training seminars. I'll have people that are managers, people that are ring announcers, just all kinds of stuff. So if I just talk at them, I find that, some of them will find it very valuable and others will just kind of miss out on that opportunity. So I'll ask them their names, I'll ask them their experience, and also where they're from. I like to, kind of connect something to them. If I know where they're from, if I know what wrestling school they went to, that just gives me a little extra layer. Because I've had so many relationships in wrestling with different wrestlers, different schools, whatever, that it just kind of creates that bond a little bit more when you say, oh, I trained at Scott D'Amore's school. Like, oh, shit, I know Scott. I remember when Alex Shelley and Petey Williams were training there. Or, oh, I go to the ROH dojo. Like, oh, okay, cool. So it just, I ask them those questions because I want to get to know them a little bit, right? Then if I have a while to talk, I'll ask them stuff like, what was it that made you want to become a wrestler? Like, what was it that hit that trigger that was like, okay, this is something I have to do? Because I think that tells me a lot about that person when they can give me information on what it was that inspired them. And then again, that's also, it just helps create that bond between me and them because I just get a bit bigger feeling for them. And then I ask, what do you think your strengths are? And what do you think your weaknesses are? Right. And I will get all kinds of feedback on this. And what's awesome is somebody will say, "Hey, my weakness, I'm not good at calling things in the ring on the fly." So I've got my little bit that's like, okay, well, you know, um, get in your habit, figure out the moves that you do and just have them in your back pocket and have little sequences that you can do that are just come natural to you. Um, so that you don't have to memorize, I'm going A, B, C, D, E. It's like, oh, we're in the heat. I'm going to do stuff that I would do in the heat. Um, we're chain wrestling. I'll do a couple things that I have in chain wrestling, and it's stuff that you can call in the ring. So when I talk about that, that's not just answering this person's question. There may be 2 or 3 other people that have that same issue. And then I'm kind of, crossing that one off the board. Then somebody will say, my weakness is my promos. And then I can talk for a little bit about promos. And then by the time we get through 15, 20 people, we've covered so many different topics of pro wrestling. And then it also loosens up the room. Everybody kind of has just a little bit better rapport with one another. And then, gosh, I'll do these seminars, and sometimes they're supposed to be 2 hours. Sometimes they're 3 hours. And we almost always go over because it's just, gosh, I love talking about wrestling. I mean, we're talking about wrestling right now, right? We're having a good
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And it is just, so when I do that, no 2 seminars are the same. They're always different. They're always tailored to the individual. And then sometimes you just get some funny answers like, no shit. I did a seminar and this guy said his weakness was the girls in the crowd like him so much that their boyfriends always want to fight him, and it always causes problems for him. And I kind of looked around a little bit like, okay, cool. And he's being serious.
Yeah.
And then he also said, my strength is I always got the flyest gear. Like my shit is always tight. I'm like, all right, hell yeah, man. I want to see you wrestle now. It's just, yeah, it's fun, man. So, if I were to do a seminar, it's also different depending on the level of experience, because I have to tailor how I talk about things to what their capabilities and capacity is. It's like when somebody is having their first 10 matches or so, and they'll pull me aside and say, "Hey, what did you think?" I have to come up with a way to explain 2 or 3 things in a digestible format so that I don't overwhelm them. You're not, this is day 1 of English 101. You're not writing a fucking novel, right? You got to write the sentence first. You got to write a paragraph first. You got to write a chapter first. I think people get a little carried away and they will just okay, always do this, never do this, never about that, whatever. It's hard for me to just straight up critique a match when I don't know the person, because there's so much context that goes into that. So I have a couple people that will send me matches and we'll kind of talk about stuff, but it's always different because different experience, different situations, different context. I don't know what instructions they were given for the match. So like in NXT, for instance, people would ask me, "Hey, what'd you think of that?" I would say, what did your producer say? So I already want to know what they got from their producer. And then I also want to know, okay, how much time did you have? What was the finish supposed to be? What was the story you were trying to tell? And then knowing those things, I can give a critique or 2. But if I just critique them without knowing any of that, I'll be shitting on them for something that their producer told them to do. I'll be, criticizing them for a finish that their opponent wanted them to do, so that's just kind of futile to just kind of blankly criticize someone. So you have to build up that context. And when I do those seminars, that just gives me that context for talking with people.
Well, let's add a little context to one of our favorite segments here on the show. Some words of wisdom. You got any advice you can drop on us today, Chris?
Yes, I implore you to watch as much of your show as possible. So when you have a match, it is so easy to just get wrapped up into putting your match together, hanging out in the locker room, talking with everybody. Next thing you know, the show's almost, halfway over and you're up next, right? If you can, get your match called early as possible, or get the bulk of it called so that you can have that in your brain and you kind of let it settle in, and find a place to watch the show. I realize this isn't always possible. I don't want people, sitting out in the crowd watching the match. I don't want people over at the gimmick table drawing attention away from the match to watch. But if you have a monitor,
yeah,
if you can poke your head out of the curtain, if you can find some kind of a little balcony to watch, I think it is so important to watch the match. And the reason I say this is, one, you can get a gauge for how the audience is.
Yeah.
You can find out what they're buying, what they're not buying, which sections of the crowd are the most animated. You can get an idea for what finishes people are doing. You can see, how they're reacting to the heels, it's very important. It will help you perform better. I do realize it's not always possible. When it is impossible to watch the show, have a general idea of what the other people on the show do, so that you can, to not do the same exact move that this guy does, the same cutoff that this guy does, the same finishes that this guy does, whatever. You just want to, you want to get the most out of your match. So you don't want to recycle a bunch of stuff that they did in the 3 matches before yours. And watching the show is the easiest way to kind of see that. And then also, you might come up with this idea for a shine that you think is awesome. You see someone in the first match do something similar and the crowd farts on it.
Yeah.
So let's just leave that fart for that match, and try not to get that yourself. It's building a rapport with the people in the locker room, so that you kind of know what they do, know what they're, especially if you're in a tag match, you want to talk to the other tag match or other tag matches and say, hey, how are you guys getting into the hot tag? What kind of cutoff are you guys doing? What kind of finish are you guys doing? You don't want to be annoying as hell, but there is just a way to kind of smarten yourself up to these things, so that when you go out there and you do your match, you are able to have the best match you can, you get the best response, and then also figure things out on the fly. You have to exercise those muscles if you want to get better at it. So if you have the opportunity, watch as much of the show as possible. Get your match called, get nice and relaxed, let that match marinate in your head, and adjust on the fly. I think that's very important.
Great advice. And now you're going to drop the song of the week on us. Chris, what's going to play us out this week?
This song is by the artist known as KRS-One. Knowledge reigns supreme over nearly everybody. People that were familiar with the Kings of Wrestling know that our finishing move was called the KRS-One. Kings reign supreme over nearly everybody. KRS-One has a ton of great songs. He's just such a lyrical MC. He's just very gifted, and was very before his time. The song I would like you to check out is called MCs Act Like They Don't Know, which I believe is from his self-titled album. I think it came out around 96. Great album. He's got a lot of good tracks on there. But this song, I believe, man, I must have heard it hundreds of times in last year's NBA 2K game. Like
Yep.
it was just on there all the time. Just a great song, great melody, great beat, great lyrics. So KRS-One, check them out.
MCs act like they don't know. Here we go. And we'll see you next week right here on Can Chris Hero Save Wrestling? We'll find out. But first, here's KRS-One. Thanks, man.